The WNBPA just turned down possibly millions of dollars, and they're doing it intentionally. So by now I'm sure we've all seen this viral picture of Sophie Cunningham pointing during a WNBA game. And this all stems from an incident last month when Sophie Cunningham and DeWanna Bonner got into it after a scrum with Caitlin Clark. And this meme has been everywhere. Celebrities are doing it, other athletes are doing it, and even the White House posted about it. Sophie herself has gained almost 1 million Instagram followers since this incident. So you'd think that this being one of the most marketable and viral moments of the WNBA's history, that brands would be rushing to cash in on. Well, the story here is that they literally can't, because the WNBA PA, their Players Association, has blocked any brands from using this. And they're telling all of their partners like 2K, Panini, Breaking Tea, and Lids that they cannot use this image because it is conduct stemming from a player confrontation. And they said that this moment by Sophie Cunningham is considered derogatory. Now, on the other hand, Sophie is still able to use this image and this moment for anything that she wants, and she can generate revenue off of it. But the same league, who is fighting tooth and nail to try and get a bigger piece of the pie for their players, is telling their business partners to stay away from the biggest IP that any player has generated in the last season. But of course, let me know what you think about this, and if you want the full story on this, go to frontofficesports.com.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So, I'm sure you've heard by now that Sophie Cunningham, a WNBA player, she has gone viral again due to some resurfaced comments about male players competing in women's categories. Apparently she retweeted something that she had said in 2022, and then she elaborated further in a recent ESPN interview. The article was released, and I guess some people were unhappy with it because she dared to say that men should not be competing in women's categories. Something as simple as that has caused a lot of backlash for the WNBA player. And remember, Sophie went viral with people who, probably hadn't heard of her before for her pointing during an altercation with another player. She went viral for that moment. A lot of memes were created, and the WNBA called it derogatory and didn't even utilize the publicity that came from that moment. So she has acquired a lot of new fans. The WNBA has acquired some new viewers as a result as well. Similar to what happened with Caitlin Clark, it's happening with Sophie Cunningham, mainly because of her personality, of her no-nonsense attitude, of her not being afraid to speak up and speak the truth. And it's refreshing. In a world of Megan Rapinos, people are saying, be a Sophie Cunningham. And it's nice to see a current female athlete standing up for the young girls who are still being forced to compete against boys, women who are still being forced to compete against men.
Stars to emerge from Caitlin Clark, the Caitlin Clark saga, who's the fantastic WNBA player who gets targeted all the time, is Caitlin's bodyguard. And her name is Sophie Cunningham. She's got a fantastic personality. She's also a martial artist and a fantastic basketball player. And she's been a bit of a celebrity. She's actually bonded with Dana White. She goes to UFC events. And I think her profile is only going to grow. The one thing she said in 2022, she came out and basically was against Leah Thomas when Riley Gaines, who's now with us now on Outkick, said, I should not be swimming against a transgender athlete. And then she said she got a lot of hate because of that. She goes, I'm not against transgender. I'm not even political. But she got a lot of negative feedback about that.
So what happened is she retweeted, a CBS Sports host tweeted out, female collegiate athletes deserve so much better than this. And so that was in 2022, years ago. She just retweeted it. And then people are putting words in her mouth saying, this is how you feel. And she said, she's setting the record straight in this ESPN interview. She said, I got a lot of negative feedback about me hating trans. And I'm like, I never once said that. I think that I am here to extend love. But I also think with that love is truth, being honest. And I want to protect young girls in a locker room or young girls in sports who shouldn't have to go against biological men. I think she speaks for most Americans. Be who you want to be. Nobody cares. If you're an adult, this is America. You can be who you want to be. You might not agree with what they're doing, but it is America. You have that right. And I think she's just saying it's not fair to our girls to let biological men who are stronger than the girls play on their same teams, because it's not only fairness, it's also safety.
And common sense, right? The Olympics are their male and female events, of course. You know, how many women are in the NFL? How many women are in the NBA? How many women are in Major League Baseball? I mean, this is just a common sense issue. And I think any father out there with a daughter, I have a 9-year-old daughter, the idea that she would be sharing a bathroom with boys or even playing softball or soccer with young boys, it just doesn't sit well with most Americans. It's an 80-20 issue.
So, of course, people were calling her transphobic, a bigot, claiming that she's, you know, just pandering to MAGA and all of this sort of thing. When the reality is, she's just speaking something that most people agree with. Everybody knows that sports has categories. Sports has categories for a reason. Without those categories, women wouldn't even be able to participate in sports across various levels, because we can't just walk up to the men's team and compete with them at the same level. We would risk our safety, we would be outperformed, we wouldn't even qualify. This is not anything new. So of course she's going to say, and anybody who's being honest would say, that it's unfair for men to compete in women's categories. Doesn't matter how they identify. And people can't just disagree, they have to make accusations.
Being honest. And I want to protect young girls in a locker room or young girls in sport who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Just a second. Oh, yeah. She got her talking points from a person that she follows on Instagram. Riley Gaines, the anti-trans activist who finished 5th and has made her career off of that very finish. And then Sophie, oh, yes, that's right. Let's follow the trend here. She also follows Charlie and Erica Kirk's Turning Point USA. Don't get it twisted. We know exactly who she is. As author Kylie Chung wrote, effing awful. Can't imagine being an adult with a large platform and choosing to bully vulnerable children in this way. Truly disgusting and beyond disappointing. One person even wrote that, like Riley Gaines, Sophie Cunningham is going to be an episode on Pablo Torre Finds Out. Phenomenal show, by the way. I really don't know how much more we have to hear from Sophie Cunningham for people to reach the conclusion that many of us already see. Imagine in an era of fascism where you say, yeah, you know, I don't agree with both sides, but I don't really disagree with either side. I'm a fence straddler. In times like these, you try playing that. That is a lame out. That is weak sauce. Because in times of injustice, if you stay neutral, you are siding with the oppressors.
The attack that trans people, the attacks that they've gone through for the last, I don't know, I mean, the current administration for sure, it seems like it's gotten really way more aggressive. You know, it's sort of sickening when you think about the issues that they're trying to tackle, that there's really not issues. The number of transgender athletes that they're making now laws for and creating a problem to get elected. And so for, you know, to give them credit that they found something that resonated with their group. What I'm hopeful for is that people have gotten themselves more educated and they understand that that's actually not a problem. That's not an issue. And together, I think that where you do have maybe some challenges with regard to biological perceived strengths, there are guardrails in place in anything that we do. And there's no reason why we couldn't get together and do that, because exclusion is never the answer. Separate isn't equal. And trans lives matter. And so to take away something so valuable that sports brings to young people in particular, and what it does, you know, as I have a youngster, and encourage them to be a part of a team and what it gives you in the way of, you know, whether it's teamwork, leadership, you know.
So Sophie herself was asked about her comments in the ESPN article. She was asked to elaborate, and I'm happy to report that she is not bowing the knee. She's sticking with what she said, and that is very much appreciated.
On that same vein, in that story with ESPN, you talked about wanting to protect young girls who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Just can you expand your viewpoint on that?
I mean, I think I said what I said. I think it's kind of common sense. And I think I'll always believe in that. I think it's really important to protect children, and that's little girls who are also involved in that category. And so I stand on what I said, and I always believe that.
Yeah. Do you see your advocacy on that, like, taking any form going forward?
You know, I don't know. I'm not a very political person, but I do have beliefs. I have morals, and I'll always stand on those and be true to who I am. And I think people are going to take it how they want to take it, but I've never even really said anything about that. And so when it comes just to protecting young girls in sport and women in sport, I feel very strongly about that. I think that's why you have Title IX. That's why you have some of the greats in women's sports. If Title IX and women's sports weren't protected, then you wouldn't hear about any type of women in sport. And so I think in the future, it's just really important to protect.
And what a wonderful response. What a wonderful response. So to the point, she's not trying to apologize for anything because she never said anything wrong. And she's reinforcing the fact that wanting to protect little girls, you know, from boys coming into their locker rooms is not a bad thing. Wanting girls to have the same opportunities as male athletes, again, is not a bad thing. And then she points out that she wouldn't be where she is today if she had to compete against men. And there's nothing wrong with wanting girls to have the same opportunities that you had, rather than being these ladder-pulling female athletes throwing girls and women under the bus, such as the likes of Megan Rapinoe. So then they go on to basically make accusations. Well, are you transphobic? Do you hate certain groups of people? And of course she's like, no. Wanting girls and women to have fair sports is not hatred.
Do you think, I guess along the line like that, it goes against perhaps, some people might say, hey, for the trans community, this could be something that could come back on us or be targeted against us. Like, how do you, I guess, view that sort of critique?
You know, like I said, I extend love, and I don't dislike anyone. Like, I think there is room for absolutely everyone here, and I think there's room to love everyone. And I truly think when you get people in the same room and you have conversations, you actually have a lot in common with a lot of people. And so I'm there to love, but I'm also there to love biological women, and I think that there are rights that need to be protected. And like I said, I'm going to stand true to that. I'll never falter in my beliefs in that, but I have never once said I hated the trans community. Like I said, I think there's space for everyone.
And I really hope that Sophie's words encourage other girls to speak out, encourage other female athletes to speak up and not be silenced, not be afraid to say what you know to be true. This shouldn't even be offensive, but they have brainwashed people to consider it offensive to say that girls should have their own category. Who are you to put a label on her? Because she's saying that women and girls should be protected in sports and given the same opportunities. It's not going to work. And it's so nice and refreshing to see her not being afraid in such a woke environment, let's be real. One of the interviewers then went on to ask her about Brittany Griner. Do you think that was a coincidence? Wow. I mean, I'm just saying.
It's so fun. I played with BG for 6 years, and so I know her like the back of my hand. And as of late, she's been playing really good. She's been playing like OG Brittany. And so we have our hands full down in the paint. I really think actually Connecticut is playing really good as a whole. I think everyone's playing their role really well from top to bottom. You know, they don't go out there and do anything outside of what they do, and that makes it difficult. And so, yeah, you could look at standings and where they're at in the league, but when you do that in this league, you're going to get beat by 50. And so we have one more game before break.
Very, very gracious indeed. I don't think you can fault that in any way, unless you are an unreasonable person.
I have, Sophie, how do you, I guess, navigate a climate where whatever you say, people are going to say, well, this means you're automatically in this box or this label or that label, politically, morally, whatever?
I really don't care. I know that sounds bad, and I'm not trying to come off like that, but I do think, you know, everyone always is coming at it as a negative. Well, me coming out with that, there's so many people who are coming out with the positive, saying, you know what, finally someone has said something, and I don't really look at either side of those, because I know whatever I say, I'm going to get hate and I'm going to get love. And if I'm going to live by the love, I'm going to die by the hate. And that's just not who I am. I beat to my own drum. And so people are always going to have something to say. You could win the championship. You could be the best at whatever it is. And there's still people who are going to hate on you. And so that's just what this world is. So I'm confident in who I am. I'm proud of who I am. I'm happy being me. And I'm going to continue to be that.
you always had kind of that mentality when it comes to, people saying things, or is that something you've built and learned to adapt over time?
I think I've always kind of been able to, handle that type of pressure, I would say, and the type of eyes and the type of people who have comments. And like I said, there's, going to be some negative comments, but there's also a whole bunch of positive comments too that no one really ever, people hate positivity for some reason. I have no idea why, but there's a lot of positive comments too when it comes to that. And so, it is what it is. Like I said, we're all human. We're no one's perfect here. And so I really don't care what other people have to say. I know who I am. My people know who I am. And hopefully I'm doing them proud and making room for young boys and girls in our world to have a better future than we did.
Wow. Well, there's definitely nothing but love here for Sophie. And, don't change. Don't change. Don't pander to people, especially in a situation that is just wrong and immoral. It's wrong to put girls in a situation where they either have to compete against boys or not compete at all. That excludes girls and women from sports. And like she said, there's room for everybody. Just compete in the correct category and accept where you go. Some people make it all the way. Some people are just happy to have been able to participate. And these are the same people who tell Riley Gaines that you have to accept that you came fifth. She is proud to have been the fifth fastest female athlete in that category of swimming. She's actually proud of that. She's not ashamed of that. But that has nothing to do with the fact that Leah Thomas is a man and had no business disenfranchising thousands of female athletes in the NCAA. Thousands. He had no business doing that, and that should never have been allowed. He had no business exposing himself in the locker room to young female athletes. He had no business doing that. And again, that should never have been allowed. He should have accepted his 462nd ranking while competing in the correct category. The onus should not be on female athletes to compromise their opportunities and safety in their own sports.
Do you see your advocacy on that, taking any form going forward?
I don't know. I'm not a very political person, but I do have beliefs. I have morals, and I'll always stand on those.
Sophie Cunningham said something really important there. She emphasized that it's not about politics, it's about common sense and having good morals. First and foremost, this is sad that this is even a conversation, especially in women's sports. It's just a fact. Biological men are different than biological women. It's wild that we're even having these conversations, but here are just a few facts that show the distinct differences between women and men. Biological males have greater average skeletal muscle mass. Biological males have larger average muscle fiber size. Biological males have greater average upper body strength. Biological males have higher average bone density. Biological males have greater average grip strength. Biological males have higher average hemoglobin levels and greater oxygen carrying capacities. Biological males have larger average bone size and broader shoulders. Biological males have larger average heart and lung size. Biological males have greater average speed, power, and explosive performance. This should not be taken as offense. This is a fact. And it's sad to see that a lot of people that are lacking common sense these days are trying to make this a political us versus them. This is protecting women. This is protecting children. I agree with Sophie Cunningham. This is about morals and this is about common sense. And do you notice with sports, it's always biological men entering women's sports? Imagine if it was the other way around. Imagine if overnight LeBron James identified as a woman. Then he's versing against Sophie Cunningham. Majority of WNBA players can't even dunk.
Cunningham has a sneaker coming out on Friday with Adidas. I predict that Adidas would ignore the screeching of the transgender lobby and release the sneakers to huge sales to girl athletes whose admiration for Cunningham has only increased with the knowledge that Cunningham has their back and will not bow to transgender inquisition. I will be buying a pair. Go girl. What if this whole thing was a publicity stunt? No, I'm joking. If your reaction to young girls in sport shouldn't have to go against biological men is accusations of transphobia, that is simply an admission you are aware that the men who claim to be women are men, but you try to shame anyone for mentioning it. That is so spot on. That's exactly what this is about. The aim is to shame people who simply acknowledge facts. The aim is to shame people, anyone who stands up for women and girls. Sophie Cunningham is unafraid of standing up for women and girls. Sophie Cunningham is unafraid of standing for the truth. Sophie Cunningham is the way. Be more Sophie Cunningham. So the White House were asked about Sophie's comments, and this is what Caroline Levitt had to say.
Sophie Cunningham in the WNBA has been attacked as a MAGA Barbie for saying it's common sense for men to not be in women's sports and locker rooms. Is the president following this story, and has he reached out to her?
I don't believe he has reached out to her. I know he is following the story. As you know, this is something the president feels strongly about as well, and the American people do too, that men should not be playing in women's sports. It's completely ludicrous that anyone could support that. It's even more ludicrous that you do have Sophie Cunningham, a female athlete herself, very accomplished in her own right, coming forth and speaking that truth that men shouldn't play in women's sports. We want to protect women and girls, and the backlash she is receiving from Democrats and left-wing figures across the country is astonishing. They are clearly very out of touch with the American public on this issue, which again is an 80-20 issue. It's common sense. It's rooted in basic biological fact that men should not be competing against women on playing fields across the country.
Wow. So let's get behind Sophie. Let's support her. Let's show female athletes that it's okay to say this. It's okay to speak out. Do not be afraid. Yes, there will certainly be backlash. But who is the backlash from? A bunch of misogynists who think female athletes have to sacrifice themselves so that men don't get their feelings hurt? Who is the criticism really from? A bunch of delusional people who think men can become women and compete fairly against female athletes? Like she said, I said what I said. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Take care of yourselves, and God willing, I will see you in the next video. And a huge thanks to all of those who have hyped my videos. It is greatly appreciated.